Okay. So we're going to move on then to the submitted questions that we have for today. And I'm going to go ahead and put them in, yes, Tammy, we will, I'll put all these resources in Slack. If you're not familiar with Slack, we'll talk about that later. But yep, and you can click Save Chat Now, like Christy said, on the right-hand side. So the questions that we're going to discuss, I just posted them in chat just so you know, have an idea of what's coming up. We have 4 people on the panel today. I'll let them introduce themselves as we answer the first question. Ashley, Christy, Sean, and Shannon. So the first question that we have is, have you ever had a difficult client? And if so, how did you deal with them? And so I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Ashley. Ashley, if you introduce yourself, you know, your company, and then have you ever had a difficult client? If so, how did you deal with them?
Hey everyone, I'm Ashley Chiasson, and I'm an instructional developer at a local university, and I also do independent contracting on the side. I have had several difficult clients, and the way that I kind of deal with that, I've kind of fleshed it out a little bit as I gain more experience, but how I deal with it is by just kind of sucking it up and finishing the project. And then if they choose to request further work, I politely decline, and it's usually kind of a, no, I don't have time or resources to allocate to that at this point. I try to be as polite as I can without telling them they're a terrible client, but I mean, it's tricky. Every now and again, you do have to break up with your clients. I've only had to do that when timelines have gone on for 6+ months more than they were agreed upon, because they're going to impact other contracts that I have lined up. But generally, I just kind of suck it up and deal with the client and deal with their work, get it out, and get it delivered.
Awesome. Thank you, Ashley. And one thing that I didn't mention, but just in case you're new to the Zoom, in the upper right, you can click speaker view or gallery view. So I currently have this on gallery view for myself, and you can see everyone that's chatting, or you can toggle the speaker view. So just in case you didn't know about that, play around with it in the upper right. Okay, so suck it up and just, you know, don't do work with them again if your client is very difficult and costing you money. That's a really good recommendation. Okay, we'll move on to Christy. Well, introduce yourself and then your company, and have you ever had a difficult client?
My name is Christy Tucker, and my company is Cinead Learning. I have a blog called Experiencing E-Learning, and I've been freelance for about 4 years, working now mostly with corporate clients, but I've done both corporate and higher education and nonprofit work. One of really my first true freelance client was somebody who I never should have actually agreed to work with him in the first place. I ignored multiple red flags in the process and agreed to work with him, even though my gut was screaming to say, no, this guy who is yelling in his very first email contact to you is not somebody you want to work with. And I did walk away from that one. It did get to a point where it was, okay, here's the source files, and I'll take the 50% up front that I got, and I'm going to walk away. Mostly I try, when I've had problems with clients, to take something that I'm learning from that and change my process for next time. Like, I know I have to pay attention to those red flags when clients contact me. If they seem like a jerk in their very first contact, they're probably going to be a jerk all the way through the whole process. And so, yes, sometimes I decline the work. Usually it is, as Ashley said, you suck it up and you finish the project that you're with. You maybe choose not to do it next time. And I think, generally speaking, if there's been a problem, it has been something of expectations weren't set clearly enough. And so then I can go back to my proposal or the way I'm screening clients or my agreement and figure out, okay, I need to document this differently. I need to manage revisions differently. So I try to take it as that. And so that's sort of the strategy that I use, is to try to learn from that. And there are clients that I have chosen not to work with again.
Awesome. Thanks, Christy. So it definitely sounds like also just trusting your gut, because it sounds like you kind of knew they might be an issue in the beginning as well.
Yes. Yeah. If you want to read more about that on my blog, I'll put the link in. There's a question about what were my best projects and my worst project as an ID, and the client who was the worst ID project I ever worked on is, I have written about it on my blog with some details changed.
Oh, good to know. Thank you. Okay. I don't think Sean is in. I'm going to give him a second to answer just in case I'm missing him. Sean, are you there? Okay. So we're going to move on to Shannon. Have you ever had a difficult client? So just introduce yourself, your company, and have you ever had a difficult client?
Hey guys, I'm Shannon Connor. I own Kick Learning. I've been freelancing since 2008, and now I hire others to freelance with me. And so sure, I got to tell you, I've been really lucky. I haven't had any bad clients, but I'm 45 years old. I've been going through life a lot. I've learned, like Christy says, to listen to red flags. 10 years ago, I probably would have been more naive. I can just tell when I'm talking to somebody if I'm going to like working with them or not. And I'm very lucky. I have really good relationships with the clients that I have. We're more like partners. I invite them into the project plan. I share my Dropbox folders with them. It's just very open, very transparent. And I just haven't had any problem at all. So that does exist. Now, I've worked with other people, friendly competitors, and I've watched them have problems with clients sometimes. And if I could pin it down to one thing, I think it was due to the rigidity of their process and really almost treating the client like an enemy and wanting to hold their feet to the fire all the time and always telling them about penalties and we've lost a day here, so you're going to lose a day there and blah, blah, blah. I think you got to be a little bit more flexible. I think clients appreciate that within reason, and I just don't think you're going to run into as many problems unless you get somebody like Christy who mentioned you do come across that type. So if your first conversation doesn't go well, God, do yourself a favor, listen to the red flag, run away, you'll get other work. You will get other work. Don't worry. Go away from it.
Oh, I love you so much, Shannon. Thank you. What I hear is bring Shannon with you. That's what I hear. And then ask
Jersey doesn't hurt.
what she thinks.
Shannon, I have a question real quick, if
Sure.
you don't mind.
Sure.
Well, like you said, you're going to get more work, right? In my case right now, I've just started my own consulting firm, and I'm now scrambling for Patti and I we both live in Denver. Her and I have actually talked about this a little bit, sort of developing our own practice. Patti's really, I'm going to say, really lucky, and she did great in her previous job and was able to hop into some really top tier clients to start off her own engagements. But for me, I'm not as lucky, right? So you're, like you said, how do you let that go? I need income. I can't go a month or 6 weeks without getting paid. You know what I mean? I have bills I gotta pay. You know what I mean? So what do I do?
Sure. Well, look, we all have those moments. I got panic moments too. And I know one of our questions coming up is, how to turn down a project, but I'm going to mention it here because I'm going to tell you that I turned down a project once with a client, and they respected me so much for turning it down that they said, we're going to give you more work because clearly you see the value, you know what you're doing, blah, blah, blah. So that's just speaking to the fact, don't be afraid to turn something down. You got to take what you can get now. Who am I speaking with again? I'm sorry.
James Finder. I apologize.
Hey, James.
I need to identify myself.
Yeah, you got to get a webcam. Come on, man.
Wait, unless you want to see me I live in a tiny house. My office is literally my living room, and my bedroom's maybe 20 feet away. So
let's get you some work so you can get a bigger house.
Yeah, right.
Look, when I first started, I took anything that came to me. I really did. you know, a lot through LinkedIn, through word of mouth, through agencies, and the rate was lower at the time. You take what you can get. The key, though, is, James, being easy to work with. I will not hire people that I've worked with on other projects that I have seen be difficult, even if not to me, but to other people. So I don't know what you're like. You seem like a nice guy. Make it easy for the client, even if they're a complete pain in the ass. I don't care. Don't let them know, and they will continue to give you work. So take all those little things that come along, and you will build your network. So don't worry, you will get work. Look, I got to be honest, earlier this year I had a slower year. This is after having, you know, a $1.2 million year 2 years ago. This year I was thinking, oh my God, what happened? Were my marketing efforts not as good? No, it's cyclical. It happens. The other thing is, by the way, in the e-learning industry or learning industry in general, first quarter, there's almost no work many times. Okay, they're setting up their budgets, they're recovering from the prior year. Second quarter, they're planning their budgets, they're getting things together. So come around May, June. If you're getting to June and you haven't started getting some feelers, people reaching out to you, you might want to start upping your marketing efforts a little bit more. LinkedIn or something, this group participating a little bit more. By the third and fourth quarter, you'll probably be so busy you can't even sleep. You have to turn down, you know, party offers, invitations. You know, right now it's around the clock, and that's because everybody's got budgets they have to spend before the end of the year. So also know that you're going to be dealing with those ups and downs as well. I just steal
That's
on
very,
that.
very good.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
sorry, Patti.
No, I was just going to say that's a really great advice. I mean, it ebbs and flows, and yeah.
But you got to always
you know,
look. I worked with a guy on a Bank of America project a few years ago, and he was panicked constantly. It was his only client. He didn't market for anything else. Sure enough, they were going to cut back on contractors, and he was beside himself with panic and worry. And the rest of us were like, well, you know, we got a couple people over here, we got some things over there. So don't ever stop marketing. Don't stop.
It's a great advice. And, you know, one of the things I'll even do if it's kind of a slow time is there's a lot of e-learning companies that need instructional designers, you know, whenever they get busy. And that's like continuous work, especially when you're getting started. So, you know, I literally will Google e-learning companies and send over my portfolio and say, let me help you when you're so busy you need some extra hands. That's worked out as well.
Friendly competitors.
Yes.
Would you mind giving us a list of who those companies are, or that you've reached out to or worked with?
I don't think I'd feel comfortable doing that.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Patti. I'm sorry. I told you to go ahead, and then I kept going. Go ahead.
That's okay. I was just going to say, just literally Google e-learning companies and see, you know, you may find different people than I find.
I also met a lot at various shows and conferences. I would go to who was talking. I noticed who was attending whose presentations, and I'd strike up a relationship with those people who were the speakers. And it's been great just on all sorts of fronts, not only for exchanging work. I also give them work too if I'm busy, but also just like this, just to share ideas, keep your finger on the pulse of the industry, what's going on, share horror stories or nice stories. The horror stories are more fun to talk about.
Yes, they certainly are. Okay, speaking of horror stories, Terry kind of mentioned that she had a difficult client. So, you know, really quickly, we'll close this question out after this, but I just wanted to hear from her about how she handled that. Terry?
I don't know if I set the best example for this, because basically how I ended it was ending the relationship after 2.5 years of working together. Again, the red flags were there. I was brand new, so exactly the same situation. I should have known right away when, we really want to bring you on as an instructional designer for us. And then she keeps telling me what to do. And, you know, we end up in this never-ending argument about certain things that were being put in the classroom. And well, she took a 4-day effective facilitation course. So apparently that trumps my 6 years of university education. Like it was, and still just, she was the expert. I didn't know anything. And we'd built so much. And then her facilitators, who were subject matter experts, not instructional designers, wanted to rehash everything and move stuff around and rework the courses. And so she's, oh, we have this great idea. And I'm like, that's a wonderful idea. Shelve it. Don't do it today. We'll do it when we do new hire training down the road. And she was, oh, no, I really think we need to do this. It'll make the course better. And I told her, that's like taking us 3 steps back. It's only me and you. There's no way we're staffed to do this. It's you and I building all these courses. And I said, I definitely, as your consultant, I'm telling you, do not do this. And she did it anyway. And then she wanted me to pilot 5 courses in 6 weeks. And I told her no. And then she's on the phone to me saying, well, fix this. What's the solution? What's the solution? And I, honestly, it's not a great story because I lost my nut. Like, you wouldn't be in this situation if you'd listened to me in the first place. And now you want me to fix it. And then we were together piloting a course like a month later. And she looked at me and says, she said, I think we're done now. And I'm like, yeah, I think we are. And that was kind of it. She just let all my contracts expire. And it was a huge client I was working for, a big government client. I just couldn't work with her. And it's scary. There was a lot of stability working with them, but I just had to. Every time I saw her name on my call display, my heart just sank because I didn't want to talk to her. And so everyone's telling me, for your sanity, you have to let her go and move on. So it was a shame I couldn't have left it better, I guess. In hindsight, I think I would have cut it off earlier and not waited until I completely lost it. I knew I was getting really frustrated. So I think, again, more experience, you recognize the red flags, and hopefully you can either not get it in the first place or get out way sooner than I did.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Carrie. That's great advice. And that kind of leads us into kind of our last question, which we'll just reorder it for now because it's a good, how do you turn down a project without ruining a relationship? I put in here if you don't have the time, because that's what someone had asked, but also, that kind of goes hand in hand with what Shannon was talking about with maybe just feeling in your gut that you shouldn't accept a project. So let's maybe just jump to that question for a second, and I'll start with Christy on this one. How do you turn down a project without ruining a relationship, either if you don't have time or if you just know with your gut, like, this isn't for me?
So I've had several times where I've been, too busy to do things. I will try to refer those to other people or give them a couple of names of people to say, well, okay, I'm too busy. Let me see if I can find you somebody who might be able to do it, and maybe give them some names. Sometimes it has just been, I'm too busy, or when I took my maternity leave and took 4 months off for that, and so I was turning projects down because it's like, yeah, okay, we're getting close to my due date, and I don't want to be doing that, and everybody understood that, and it was fine. And then I've come back and done that. Even for some of the clients where I didn't want to work with them, sometimes it was just okay, philosophically, this isn't a good fit for me of how this works. I did sometimes give the names to other people, always with the caveat of, okay, this is what the situation is. So you can choose to go with this or not, and I want you to be informed and just make an informed choice. Because just because it's not a fit for me doesn't mean it's not going to work for somebody else. And so sometimes I've done that. But it generally, I think it's more likely that if I turn people down because I'm busy and I do it nicely, I think it's always been that, as I think, Shannon, you said, where people respect the fact that that you're trying to not be overbooked, that you if I say, I've got too much going on to do the kind of quality that I want to do for you, the people respect that, and you're not going to wreck a relationship by telling somebody, I'm too busy to do the quality that you want. Great advice. And I also like the advice of, trying to help them in a way of referring them to someone that would do
quality work for them. So sharing the wealth. Very good. Ashley, do you have any thoughts on this one? Turning down projects without ruining relationships?
I'm kind of in the same boat as Christy there, and like Shannon, I've had clients who have really respected saying no because I couldn't produce the quality in the timeline that they've provided, that have actually given me more work later on. I think that people appreciate when you could be honest and straightforward with them. I mean, even if if I have a difficult client, I had clients that I wanted to break up with, but didn't, and kind of suffered through the work with them. But they wanted to continue on with additional projects. And that was when I kind of just put the brakes on things and said, oh, I don't think that I have the capacity to do this work right now. Please let me try and find someone I can refer to you. Oftentimes they'll say, oh, no, don't worry about it. And I won't even have to go do that little bit of legwork. But like Christy said, sometimes just because you are not a good fit for someone or for a project, someone else might be. And I'm also big on, if I'm going to do a referral, I'll give them all of the dirt up front and kind of say, this is why I had an issue with it. I worked with this client in the past. These are the obstacles we had. And I just want you to know about that before agreeing. But I haven't really, I don't think, ruined any relationships by saying no to a project.
Awesome. Thank you very much for weighing in. It sounds like we've got a lot of the same just a lot of the same themes going there. So I think it's interesting. We always think of it as a bad thing to turn down work, but like everybody said, as long as you do it in a respectful and polite way, people respect you for that. So thank you guys. Okay, so we've got 2 questions and 12 minutes left. I think we can do this. So the next question, and probably will be pretty quick, is have you worked on projects that needed to be translated? And if so, how did you handle that? If you haven't worked on projects that needed to be translated, that's fine. Just get to the next person. We will start with Shannon on this one.
Hey there. Okay. Yeah, I've partnered with other companies or referred the business over, and right now I'm looking at a company called In What Language out of Utah. I like these guys, and when I'm doing my speaking engagement in Las Vegas in January, they're going to come and listen to me talk, which is unexpected and probably boring for them. But in any case, the point is that I want to create a partnership with a translation company, because that's a lot of work, where we can do it 2 ways. I can just refer business over for a flat fee for a period of time, or I can partner with them and actually do part of the project management for a level, a cushion, a buffer above the price, meaning that we pass the charges on to the client. So that's a big ball of worms, doing translation, especially localization. One of my clients had a bad translation company that sent courses with Christmas trees to the Mideast. And I mean, it's not just translating words. It's, you can't do stuff like that. It's a whole lot of stuff. So my advice is to partner with somebody who's very good at it.
Awesome. Thank you, Shannon. Ashley, how about you? Translation?
When I worked with the Canadian military, we had to translate all of our courseware into French. It's a government requirement, so I imagine all government contracts, at least in Canada, have to have a similar expectation. We had several organizations that we worked with to outsource the actual translation. The best piece of advice I guess I would have is to have final sign-off on anything. I mean, it goes for audio translation or just sending audio for scripting as well, or for recording, but have the final storyboard signed off on by a stakeholder, because once that starts changing, especially in corporate or in the government, the types of contractors that you have for audio translation or French translation or what have you, it gets a bit pricier than if you're just going and getting someone off of Fiverr.com or something. So if there need to be revisions after that, it can be very costly and it can be a big risk. But generally, if you're organized and kind of have those things in your mind, you should be good for it.
Awesome. Thanks, Ashley. And then last but definitely not least, Christy, translation?
So I don't have a ton of experience with translations. So 2 tips that I will have. One is when you're creating, if you're doing e-learning and you're creating things in Captivate or Storyline, leave extra space if you're translating from English to something else, because a lot of languages actually, you know, Spanish or French can be 20% longer than the English or whatever the statistic is. You can find those statistics out, but you don't cram too much on the slides because it won't fit when you translate it. The other thing, Icon Logic, if you're familiar with their site and their blog, they've done a series of posts about translating to other languages and for other countries, including talking about some of the cultural aspects that they've run into and some of the things to consider about slang or leadership styles or a whole bunch of those kind of cultural considerations. So if you are looking for, you know, if you need to translate for Guatemala as opposed to Mexico, you know, I would go look up their blog and their stuff, because that's a good research.
Awesome. Thank you, Christy. Okay, so one last question. We've got a couple of minutes apiece for this one. And I know this is an important one, so if we don't get to talk about it as much as we'd like, we'll carry it up next week. But how can you use real work samples in your portfolio? Do you ask clients if you can feature your work in your portfolio? Please weigh in the chat on what you do as well. And I'll start with Ashley on this one. So using real work samples in your portfolio.
So usually I kind of have a little bit of a discussion with my clients upfront in the negotiation phase, just kind of, hey, is this something that I can eventually share in my portfolio? If so, what format would you appreciate me sharing it in? Some clients I've had have only let me use a screenshot and then an explanation. And for those contracts, they've usually approved a video screencast, but I can only show the screencast if someone specifically asks for it. So they're okay with that. And then they also had to review the screencasts. Some of them are like, yes, fine, that's great. Others, they'll say no. And what you can kind of do is sanitize your sample a little bit. So you can use the same elements from it, but take out the logo, take out all of the text, put in like lorem ipsum text, just kind of use similar elements that show what you did in that development tool, but you're not giving away any proprietary information. I mean, building a portfolio can be a little tough, but because there's usually gaps. It usually takes you time to do the project, and you might not have a portfolio piece for, I don't know, 6 months to a year. So it can be slow going. So I think that it's just important to be upfront with your clients about what you want, and if they're not cool with that, they'll tell you, and then you'll kind of have to take your own initiative to make something yourself or make something similar that's kind of inspired by that, I guess.
Awesome. Great advice there, Ashley. Okay, over to Christy.
So I'm fortunate because several of the courses that I have developed are actually publicly available, or there's elements of them that are publicly available, YouTube videos or other things. So that's been some of it. I have one course that somebody gave me permission to do as many screenshots as I wanted, as long as I offered to write a blog post about it to give them a little bit of marketing, and so that they could sell more copies of that course. And that worked out as a win-win for everybody. My standard agreement has language in it that I added this more recently that says essentially that I have permission to use non-confidential portions of the course content for sales in my portfolio. I've added that fairly recently, but nobody's questioned it yet. If somebody questioned it, I wouldn't argue, and I would just take it out if somebody wanted to negotiate that, because it's not worth the fight. I've got enough samples anyway. But I have it in there. The language of that is from the book Consulting Basics by Joel Gendelman, which has a whole sample proposal and agreement in it if you're just getting started looking for a format. So those are kind of the strategies that I've used.
Awesome. Thank you, Christy. And then Shannon.
I think if you got a good relationship with your client, I think you definitely, first of all, don't ever do it without asking. Ask, and then ask right when you come off of a really good phone call or delivery or project. Then they're stoked, and yeah, great. I've just got really good relationships with my clients, and they want to see me succeed. And in fact, I hired a marketing firm last year, and part of their due diligence was calling clients to get information about it. And my clients talked to this guy, and they loved it, and they feel like they're part of helping me to grow Kick Learning. And so they like helping a small business. And so I think if it's in the approach, Christy, I love that idea. I think that's a great idea. I might add something about that in my contract. Now, I'll tell you, pharmaceutical companies aren't going to let you share anything. I even worked for a pharmaceutical company. I'm not even allowed to do screen share. Usually the agreement is, okay, I can't put anything on my website if it's confidential or proprietary, but at least I can have a screen share with a potential client and show them some stuff. Can't even do that in the pharma stuff. So in that case, make it a generic version, change everything about it, and then use that instead. I just noticed
Awesome.
it's 11:58. Okay.
Yeah. I definitely like the timing piece that you mentioned as well. Like, maybe even when you ask sometimes, so that's lots of good suggestions. Okay, we have 2 minutes. I'm going to make sure we're out on time. So couple of quick questions that I would love if you would weigh in on the group via chat. So the first one, you should be seeing this on your screen. How should we gather a list of graphic designers, voiceover artists, and e-learning developers? We talked last week, I think it was, about getting a list together, maybe like a Google Doc of people that maybe we've used in the past. So A, B, or C. A, add them to the LinkedIn group, let them add themselves to a list. B, share a Google Doc on Slack. We can enter those we've worked with. Or C, your own suggestion. So it looks like most people want to, for us to have control of that Google Doc, and then we will enter in those we've worked with. So perfect. Thank you for weighing in. One more poll. How often should we meet? Right now we're meeting every week. So do we feel like we want to keep meeting every week? Do you want to do twice a month, or do you want to do monthly? A, B, or C? So we've got a mix there. It looks like it's kind of split between weekly or twice a month. So we'll be meeting next week, just so everyone knows. That is the next meeting. It's December 17th. Also, and then we're going to take a couple weeks off for the holidays, just so everybody knows. I am going to post a couple of quick URLs in the meeting chat area. So 2 things if you could do for me. 1, invite other independent learning professionals. And then second, submit your questions that you want to get answered here on Slack. If you don't have access to Slack yet, email me or just put it in the chat that you want to be on Slack. But make sure you submit questions. That's how we keep this going. And then next meeting, again, is December 17th. So have a great week, everyone. Thank you so much for attending, and I will see you next week.
Have a great week, everyone. Bye.
Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.